AFR On Demand is brought to you by Breck Golf. Try Beaver Creek today, just 20 minutes from downtown Baton Rouge in the Zachary area. They've got a PGA Tour driving range, a short game practice area, 30 to 40-yard practice shots. It's a great place to chip and putt and practice if you don't have time for a full round. Book your tee time today, golf.breck.org, golf.breck.org.
Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Raising Cane studio.
Let's ride!
And off we go. Welcome aboard. Glad you're with us. It's AFR, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Day 2 here from Radio Row SEC Football Media Days. Let us begin as we do every single day.
What's up on another edition of AFR with Bud Light. Drink easy.
It is our pleasure to begin day 2 with the Commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, Greg Sankey, joining us. Sir, it's always great to see you. Thank you for the time. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
We appreciate you as always. I know you do a million of these, and we appreciate you always making yourself available. I know we have limited time with you, so I'll get right to it. I'd love your impressions on new LSU system president, Dr. Wade Roos, because I know you all are having conversations about LSU's opposition to the PCSA and a lot of things. Can we just start there just with impressions of Dr. Roos?
Very engaging, very engaged in both university leadership and in the athletics leadership. He's quick to call and converse, which is something I appreciate. I think pretty transparent as we communicate. And even around sending a letter to the senators stating, hey, we're not in a position to support right now. We need some changes. Was very communicative with me.
So with the letter that he sent, it was co-signed by Lee Mallett, who's the chairman of the LSU board. What do you make of the reasons for their opposition? Or were you all able to talk about that?
Well, I think theirs was written as we're not supporting based on the way the act is written at this point. And that doesn't mean that it's full-on opposition. When I saw drafts, that's my memory. I think the Alabama and Auburn letters use the word opposition. I think we don't support it this time is the right way.
Okay.
And that goes to, in part, Title II, which is about conference expansion and really putting a target on the Big Ten and SEC because of our successes. We view that unanimously as a league is not appropriate. The second is there's this section on pooling of media rights that's been represented as voluntary, but when you actually read the bill, it's not clear that it's voluntary. There's too many trapdoors built into it where somebody could try to force combined media rights. And then there's this football scheduling policy where I don't think the Senate should be legislating football schedules, but if you're really trying to maximize media rights, you wouldn't do that. So I think those are good reasons. And then as we've talked as a league, and this is our entire league, we identified what we think are 7 common sense changes in Title I, the first section, which really deals with the administrative heart of the Protect College Sports Act. And because those are written with gaps or some loopholes or we're not addressing some of the issues directly, I think that's a reason that we as a league have said we don't support as it's currently written. And we've tried to provide the kind of constructive common sense feedback to improve the bill and make it effective for everybody in Division I.
I believe Texas A&M, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, those are the 5 that have publicly stated opposition?
In addition to our conference-wide statement.
Is the conference's opposition different from the
It's not opposition. We don't support the bill as it's written, so it's
okay.
different.
Look, semantics matter, and I fully respect that. So what do we think is the likelihood or probability of getting the things that you mentioned, that Dr. Roos and Mr. Mallett mentioned, changed before it goes to a vote?
I think there's an opportunity, and the Senate leaders are engaged in problem solving and communication. So that's encouraging. I'm not going to go because I don't have an account on Kelce to make a prediction bet, but the fact they're still working is,
well done.
I threw that in there.
Well done.
I hope that doesn't breach some sponsor thing.
Nope, you're good.
I'm not going to go to the prediction market
and
tell you what the percentage is going to be, but the fact they're continuing to work on it is the very least encouraging.
Okay. Commissioner Sankey is with us. The 7 did I write this? The 7 changes that you were interested
In Title I, yeah.
In Title I, off the top, are they what are they?
Yeah, one is transparency around NIL reporting and the House settlement. Those go to the College Sports Commission, and in the bill, it's limited to national level. That's one. Second is we should have one standard across the country, so that's about preempting state laws around eligibility,
Sure.
recruiting, tampering, transfers.
Is that not in there now?
Not some of it is,
Because as I understand it, that's a
make
big
it
sticking
clear.
point.
Yeah, make it clear. And we're not asking to preempt every state law that applies to college athletics. Third is we should have liability protection, which basically says if Congress passes a law to put these rules in place, because they're writing the rules, then we shouldn't be sued as organizations or associations or institutions for following the law that Congress passes. Fourth issue is there's what's called a private right of action, which is the individual's right to sue. Okay, we believe that should be in federal court, not in state court, so that we have consistent national standards. So you're starting to see the consistent philosophy. We ideally would like new legislation to apply to existing legislation to reduce the number of lawsuits we have, whether that's likely to happen or not. And then there's one that I've completely blown by. Oh, I know it is. It's closed loopholes around, okay, we're defining NIL activity to be overseen, but other forms of payment should be brought into this so that there are limits and caps, because we can't have a competitive structure unless we have similarity and consistency among how we treat whatever standard it might be, eligibility, NIL, revenue share.
I'm sure you're not going to like to exist in a hypothetical, but what if the bill passes as it's currently written?
Well, we'll see, because there is conversation to adjust the elements. We'll have to see the language that is adopted to go to the floor. And then I can answer that question.
Okay.
Because I've been encouraged that the work is taking place. I've been encouraged and remain encouraged by some of the feedback. I think there'll be more changes than what I just listed, if I understand things. And we're going to have to see that text to be able to answer the question. I'm not dodging that. There are probably those who think, I have a real problem that Title II is in there. That's a whole different issue. There haven't been Senate hearings on those issues. I understand why some interest got it put into this bill because of the need in Title I. But let's see what the actual language is. Does
the league have a league-wide policy or a feeling about individual members as it relates to private equity?
We have not pursued that as a league. We don't have limitations on what an institution can do from a financing standpoint. You actually have private equity present on campuses, generally not in athletics.
Right.
We'll have some of these mixed-use developments that are happening around stadiums. We'll have private financing. And we haven't passed a rule or we do have bylaws that say our presidents ultimately are the ones that make decisions for the league, and that's not farmed out someplace. So I guess that would be one piece.
So, but the league as a whole, like it's the Big 12 reached a league-wide private equity.
Right.
That's not something you're saying that the SEC has pursued at this
Yeah,
point?
we've met with people. We've met with dozens. I've put the logos up every so often to say, okay, here are the deals, and typically the response is, we don't want to give away rights in the future.
Right.
We have a credit facility that will pay off in the fall from COVID, so people didn't have significant sports or personnel cuts. But we haven't been directed to go pursue that. And generally, the money can be achieved at lower rates than what the private financing mechanisms have offered.
Greg Sankey is our guest. How do you feel about coach poaching within the conference?
I'm neutral on it generally because it's happened. You know, we had Dan Mullen move from Mississippi State to Florida. You had the Texas A&M coach move to Texas. That caused some news in baseball.
Yep.
We've had Cal move from Kentucky to Arkansas. I go down the list. We've had ADs make a move. You know, Scott Woodward from Texas A&M to LSU. I do think it should be done in an orderly process. I don't think while the team's playing that we should just sit on the sidelines any longer. And I was asked about that in early December by members of Congress who started drafting legislation, which is in bills, both the SCORE Act and the Protect College Sports Act, to change that time frame. And If we all operated on the same time frame, that would become, I think, a net neutral. But you also have to manage the transfer portal and the tampering that happens around things in the recruiting environment, because that's what drives this behavior. Matt, I wouldn't have been on 15 years ago when early signing was first being talked about, but my continual warning is if you put early signing for high school kids into December, you're going to accelerate the hiring and firing decisions.
Yes.
And guess what we did? We accelerated the hiring and firing decisions. So we ought to hold ourselves accountable, not just point fingers at everybody else. But I think we can find a more orderly way to do these things.
What would be the ideal time frame?
Well, after a team's season is complete.
Is that possible?
In general? It is, but you have to shift a lot of things, right? You can't just stand pat on where we are. You have to shift a lot. And we accelerate this because of the recruiting dynamics, right? You have to get people ready to go from a recruiting standpoint.
Greg Sankey's with us here for a couple more minutes. You mentioned tampering. How would you feel about a legal tampering period like we see in the NFL?
I think what's needed is a clear vision on what we desire around tampering rules, not kind of the old way that we tinker around with some rules and we have harsher penalties from the NCAA. I think that's the completely wrong way to address this issue. So what has been introduced is like a communication period, and then you enter the actual transfer portal period. Can that work? Sure. But we have to have a way to monitor everybody in the ecosystem. And the NFL has agent certification, where if you engage in certain behaviors, you're out. You can't represent someone. Can the NCAA ever achieve that? Can you do that at the conference level? Perhaps. Then we have to, from an accountability standpoint, rather than say we need harsher penalties for like a first offense, we need a warning. We need a first offense, a second offense where it's more aggressive, third offense where it's even more aggressive, and people start to be held accountable. And I think accountability should be on two sides. One is on the coach involved, and the other is on the player involved. Because I've watched some of these matters that have been reported, and a player's got somebody around them that they've allowed to exist and reach out and engage in activity. And you start to read the narrative, and you're like, you know what, there's one person who could have stopped this whole process, and that's the young person who could have said, you know what, you're not authorized to go out and represent me that way. So I think there has to be a rethinking of how this problem is approached.
It's interesting because there was the most notable public allegation of tampering was the Ole Miss Clemson back and forth with Dabo Swinney in his press conference. I know from your perspective, you even mentioned it in your remarks yesterday, not specific to tampering, but I think it was with regards to potentially breaking away. Is that you rather conversations stay behind closed doors and maybe on a Zoom call? Is there a way that could happen? And to where it's not public, where you could reach some type of resolution?
Oh, sure. We've provided information where a school has shared tampering information with us, and a lot of times it goes nowhere. But yeah, it can be done, and people make decisions to make things public for their own purposes generally. And I think in my role, we all live in glass houses right now around tampering. My coaches tell me in every sport, hey, here's what's going on, here's how it plays out. There's a lot of people around the players that are making phone calls trying to drum up business. Our basketball coaches had a conversation and said, look, you can tell in like early December if somebody realizes they're not going to get a lot of playing time that they're out there trying to figure out what the next business opportunity is, if you will, where they're going to go play next. So, I would encourage people to be careful when they go to the microphone.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of communication happening because this culture has changed. And if somebody decides to make it public, that's their decision. But I think there are more effective ways to deal with these problems.
Similarly, I wanted to ask about Ole Miss Athletic Director Keith Carter, who publicly mentioned two LSU players that transferred from Ole Miss to LSU have not paid the buyouts, accused of not paying the buyouts, because we don't know definitively. I don't have any reason to believe he's lying. Those conversations happening publicly. How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't know if those – we have at least one lawsuit in the league about an unfulfilled payment involving two other schools. So if you're going to file litigation and you've got contract law to deal with, okay. I don't think I in Destin said, you know what, we need to be talking about your own programs. That's your responsibility, not to comment on everybody else. And I think Keith can make an argument, well, it is our program. We had a contract, and people walked away, and they owe a buyout, if that's true. And I understand that. But we do need to understand, as these contracts are being signed, that they do carry implications. You know, we have athletics directors with buyouts that are required to be paid. We have coaches with buyouts that are required to be paid. And now we have players with buyouts that are required to be paid.
You coming to Baton Rouge week 1?
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah. Yep. Be a big night.
It's going to be a really fun night. It'll be really fun to watch football.
Not talk about name, image, and likeness for a few hours, right?
Or the Protect College Sports Act, or any of the other things. Oh, love it. But it's what you and I guess we all signed up for. We always sincerely appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you.
Thanks for being here.
That is the Commissioner Greg Sankey joining us for a few minutes. Again, always very generous with his time here as we start day 2 at SEC Football Media Days. Our coverage is presented by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Championship Health Partner of LSU Athletics, Parish Construction and Roofing, Relief Windows, reliefwindows.com, proud partner of LSU Athletics, and Rev Fiber, proud partner of LSU Athletics. We're going to knock out a quick break. The head of officiating for the Southeastern Conference, John McDaid, is set to join us here in just a few minutes. So we are rip-roaring straight out the gate here. We are live from Radio Row, day 2 of SEC Football Media Days. We've got a lot coming up as well. Brooks Austin, the film guy, is going to be with us. Very much looking forward to that conversation as well. Well, X and O, some stuff there with Brooks. We're looking forward to that conversation. Chris Doring, Marty Smith, visited with Marty, and I basically just said, Marty, tell me the story of Thanksgiving weekend in Oxford. Go. And for like 8 minutes, he just went, and you're going to hear that coming up at the top of hour number 3. Stay with us here. It is AFR.
AFR.
Tuesday shows here from Radio Row, brought to you by River City's 1 Hour Air, 752-0001, 752-0001, or 1hourbr.com. Spell it at O-N-E, 1hourbr.com for River City's 1 Hour Air. I don't know what the weather's like back home, but it's 92 right now in Tampa. Kind of windy. We actually avoided some rain today. It's been raining, but the heat is oppressive. The humidity is incredible. And if you are sweating through it, you got to make sure your AC is ready to stand the test of the triple-digit temps throughout the summer months. Call River City's 1 Hour Air if you have any issues with your AC. 752-0001, 752-0001, 752-0001, or 1hourbr.com. The big yellow vans and trucks with the giant clock on the side, they'll never charge you extra to come out nights, holidays, and weekends. They're the best. More than double the amount of 5-star Google reviews of the next closest competitor. It's River City's 1 Hour Air, 752-0001, where they're always on time or you don't pay a dime.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa, presented by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Relief Windows, Rev Fiber, and Parish Construction and Roofing.
Yeah, I've actually been saying that for a long time to our president and our administrators that, you know, my frustration is I sit in a meeting, and so many times I sit in a meeting, and I learned this, I think 11 years ago, my first SEC head coaches meeting. I had a coach tell me, we will not get anything done in these meetings because we don't have any power or any control. We sit and say what we want, but that doesn't necessarily come to fruition. So I've learned that, you know, until we get governance and we have someone that actually has the power to make decisions, or we can make decisions within our own community, we're not going to have much control. And that's unfortunate, but that's where we sit right now. And if that's the best alternative to get everybody playing by the same rules, then I would want to do that.
Kirby Smart on Get Up here on Tuesday, and it was Georgia's turn at the podium, and naturally there's a lot of conversation about Georgia, which over the past decade has been the preeminent SEC power. Of course, they'd won back-to-back national titles, and but for stubbing their toe in the conference championship game, might well have won a third consecutive a few years ago. But the conversation there with Kirby Smart started because of what Greg Sankey said at the podium to open SEC Media Days on Monday, when he talked about the breakaway comments. That, of course, was Kirby and the leadership there at the University of Georgia. And what's so interesting, and I bring this up only to say, we kind of refer to this time as talking season, and I get it. We're all excited about football because they're about to tee it up, kick it off, and we're going to play football and have 5 months of imbibing on football, and it's going to be amazing. But during talking season is when a lot of these coaches, administrators, whomever it may be, they know that they have everyone's attention. So this is when you will start to see them stump for certain things that, whenever we first started coming to this event in 2012, Commissioner Mike's Live, I learned that lesson from him when he would have his State of the Conference address to open media days. And there was always a point or two, be it saber rattling or whatever. The funny thing is, at the time, the big thing was cost of attendance. It's when they wanted to be able to cover student athletes' full cost of attendance, basically giving them a stipend to cover the cost of attendance. And the non-power programs couldn't afford it, so they didn't want to do it. And Mike's Live basically said, you're going to do this or we're just going to break away. So it's interesting that, some 15 years ago, these conversations were being had loosely, but it's mostly about the tail wagging the dog. And the SEC and the Big Ten are the preeminent powers in the sport. They have the biggest brands. They make the most money. They drive revenue and attention and all the things. And they don't want terms dictated to them by the other leagues, by the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12, the Mountain West. And when you think of it, it stands to reason. And so, Kirby, I think I appreciate very much his transparency. And there's a guy with a ton of clout and credibility as a two-time national championship winning coach, and he's played for another, and a guy who people listen to when he speaks. You look around college football, and with Nick Saban retired and some of the more veteran coaches, you look at this era of Kirby and Dabo and Ryan Day. I mean, these are the coach, Lane Kiffin, that are the coaches with the loudest voices, the biggest megaphones here in this era. And so you heard Kirby say it, whereas the commissioner said on the podium he would rather a situation where those conversations are had behind closed doors or on a Zoom and left there. But Kirby said you do those and then nothing happens. And so all that to say, it's very intentional when coaches or players or administrators make these types of comments at media days or otherwise, because they are trying to generate conversation and attention and awareness around the change that they want to see. Listen, I know today we're here and it's so much more interesting to talk about, can Gunnar Stockton take that next step? Vanderbilt's here today. What's life like without Diego Pavia? South Carolina was on the doorstep of the playoff 2 years ago and a massively disappointing season a year ago with Lenora Sellers, and it feels like Shane Beamer has got to have a breakthrough this season. Auburn, 5 straight losing seasons. Now comes Alex Golish. So can Byron Brown get Auburn back to bowl eligibility in year one as the starting quarterback? Those are the things we want to talk about, and we're going to talk about, and we're going to do all the football stuff because, that is why we're here. We also, two things can be true. It's not a comma, but it's a period, new paragraph, because both things are true. We are in the most transformative time in the history of the sport that we all love. And this is one of those times where we look at things like governance and the Protect College Sports Act and NIL and things like private equity and rev share and how does it all work, and then Kirby talking about the future of the college football playoff and who will have autonomy and all of those things. And they all blend together because however this shakes, and this is the most seismic shift, this is the greatest seismic shift in the history of college athletics, which we're seeing right now. But the last time we saw something this big was the summer of 2011 when we saw the first really big round of realignment, when Missouri and Texas A&M came into the SEC, or announced they were coming into the SEC, when it looked like Texas and OU might be going to the Pac-12. They ended up staying in the Big 12. When Nebraska and Rutgers went to the Big 10. I think Maryland followed. But anyway, that was 15 years ago. And this is even more seismic than that, but that dominated an entire offseason because it reshaped the landscape of college football. So too will this. Whatever happens with the Protect College Sports Act and the idea of private equity and funding in college athletics and all that stuff, it matters so much because ultimately when this dust settles, it will dictate how the teams that we all cheer for and love and watch continue to perform, how they build rosters, how they pay their players, how coaches manage, and the domino effect and the ripple effect therein. So appreciate Kirby for being vocal and having the conversation. Okay, it is After Further Review. We're glad to have you aboard with us here. We're brought to you by Rouse's, the official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints. Rouse's.com, Rouse's.com. A taste of summer is coming up this Saturday at every Rouse's location from 11 to 2. That's all 76 locations from Lake Charles to Orange Beach. It's going to be awesome. They're going to have tons of summer-inspired samples throughout every restaurant. We're talking about different things like smoked sausage, fresh cut watermelon and dragon fruit, seafood cocktails, cheese samples, sardines, I'm a big fan, snowballs, ice cream toppings, seasonal hatch chili favorites, summer dips, so much more. Make sure this Saturday, 11 to 2, you get by Rouse's, the official supermarket of the New Orleans Saints, for a taste of summer. Rouse's.com. Rouse's. This feels like home. All right, we're here from Radio Row at SEC Football Media Days. Tuesday shows are powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. We were supposed to have the the coordinator of football officials, John McDaid, with us here, and I don't see him. So we're just going to proceed with the show. So if you can join us, awesome. We'll get him when we do. But let me knock out a quick break. We'll continue when we come back. Stay with us here on a Tuesday edition of AFR.
AFR.
Hey, I always want to remind you about our friends over at Goodwood Men's Sexual Wellness, yourgoodwood.com, because what they do over there is help men feel their best and live their most optimal life. Yourgoodwood.com, yourgoodwood.com. Lowest prices, never any contracts. It's so important to remember. If you are paying for hormone replacement therapy and you're not at Goodwood, you're probably overpaying. Remember, there are no membership fees. So if you're currently at a clinic that has a membership fee, leave immediately. That's number one. Number two, if you're not at Goodwood, you're overpaying because they have the lowest prices. And then number three, remember also, when you do your blood labs every 6 months, if the clinic you're currently with charges you for those blood labs, remember, Goodwood, they pick up that cost. So it will be a better customer service experience, more convenient, more cost-effective. It's Goodwood Men's Sexual Wellness. Yourgoodwood.com. Yourgoodwood.com. Need a steel building? Proform Steel. I want you to remember the name. Why use Proform Steel? Well, I got tons of reasons. Here's a few. How about the lead times? 6 to 8 weeks from signed contract out the door. They'll get it to you quicker. Free delivery on every building. You buy it from them, they'll deliver it for free. It's Proform Steel. You can even order online. You can pick the style, size, color, doors, submit the form, get a call back the same day. And at Proform Steel, they use American-made materials on everything. No exceptions. It's Proform Steel. Maybe you need a shed in your backyard. Maybe we're talking about a big industrial facility. Need a steel building? You want Proform Steel. Make sure you call Brandon Golson, you know the name, at Proform Steel. Check them out, Proform Steel.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa. Presented by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Relief Windows, Rev Fiber, and Parish Construction and Roofing.
Our coverage continues from Digital Drive, Day 2, SEC Football Media Days. John McDaid, the coordinator of football officials for the Southeastern Conference, good enough to stop by. How are you, sir?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Doing great. So we were talking before we came on air about your experience with Lane Kiffin. Were you still on the field when he began as a head coach at Ole Miss?
No. He was... I'm trying to think. I came off the field in 2019.
So COVID year was his first year at Ole Miss.
That's correct. Which was my first year in this role.
Okay. So, but you did remember him from his days as an OC at Alabama.
That's correct.
Do you ever have interactions on the field with coordinators?
Sometimes you did. Many times you did not. But sometimes you did. The times that you did, more times it was because it was a coach you knew each other for 10 or 15 years, sure. Right? The coordinators are coaching. It's one of the great things about football is that every down they need to think about what they need, what play to call, right? Whereas maybe in basketball, where it's more free-flowing, the coach at times has more times to bend the official's ear, right? Because he doesn't have to think about making a play call, right? So the coordinators, typically you don't hear from them as much. There's exceptions, but they're just, my experience, defensive coordinator, he's got to make sure he's got someone with him that's got to run defensive matchup substitutions when the offense, substitutes. altitude. So not so much. And Coach Kiffin was not one of the ones as a coordinator. We'd make eye contact every once in a while, or he'd ask me a question or whatnot. But I was a referee at the time as well, right? Sure. I was in the middle of the field. Yeah. I used to joke with the sideline guys, what are you trying to tell me? They actually yell at you over there, right? There's no problems out here in the middle of the field.
Who was the biggest pain in the behind?
There was never any pain.
Yeah,
no. Did
you were never like, God, we got them this week?
Well, in all honesty, and I used to have this conversation at least once a season with my crew. You can't allow yourself to develop a prejudice against a coach like that, because you're never going to be able to do the best you possibly can do for them, right? You always had to find a middle ground. And that was one of the reasons why I stopped reading. Like, if there was a journalism piece about college football that was talking about trends, or it was based on facts or whatnot, that's great. But if it was a piece that it was a bunch of opinion on how I thought a coach was doing during the season or whatnot, I didn't read it, because all it was going to do was create a prejudice that was going to be in the back of my head. And when things got hot, it would creep in. I prided myself. In fact, it's the one thing I miss from being on the field. People ask me, do you miss me on the field? And I really don't. I haven't second-guessed myself making a decision to come off and take this position. But I do miss conflict resolution. For some reason, going to someone that just wants to tear your head off and go have a conversation to calm things down. I don't pretend for a moment I'm going to convince him I'm right and he's wrong. But at least if I get to him where we agree to disagree and he calms down and we go for it, I miss doing that, right? And I never got to where, and I'm using never correctly here, I never got to where I dreaded going and having that conversation, because I couldn't do my job if I ever got there.
I know fans exist in a mindset where the officials are out to get us, the officials are never right. It's a fan mentality, and I understand that. Do you, when you're dealing with coaches, I can certainly appreciate never wanting what you said about never wanting to read something that have a bias filter through, but how much does the environment of the game affect how an official calls a game?
Well, someone who's been in the Southeastern Conference for 5 years, very little. Right, because they've experienced it now for 5 seasons, right? But I can tell you, Commissioner Sankey usually spends a quarter on the field. It's usually one of the quarters in the first half, and he'll be at games where the crowd noise is just palpable, right? It actually, you feel it in your bones. And he's asked me questions before. He's like, how do you know an official can officiate in front of that? Or how do they keep their wits about them, right? And I tell him, I says, look, I can go and look at an official that is working at a lower level. Maybe it's just he's working in which is now the group of 6, right? And very good official. I got a lot of game film on him. Looks very good mechanics, moves well, makes a lot of terrific judgment calls and whatnot. But how do I know that he can go in front of 105,000 people and keep their wits, as they go through 3.5 hours of football game? You don't know until you give them an opportunity to do it. Yeah. And it is an acquired ability to keep your wits. But I can tell you, I got to the point where people would. I had games where people said, what did you think of this moment? Or they would be referring to something that wasn't going on directly in front of me on the field. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Like, I just had blocked everything out. And I'll tell you one thing that's really helped us is when I first started officiating the FBS level in 2001, teams were universally still huddling. Right? And you had that 8, 10, 12-second pause almost every down where you could just look around and take it all in. Now with the tempo of our offenses and dealing with substitution mechanics and everything else we're doing, you never get that moment other than the media timeouts to actually look around and have that stuff affect you. You're too busy working your craft and doing what you have to do. So it's not for everybody. I'm not saying that everyone that we asked to come work in the Southeastern Conference, they wildly succeed in that environment, but you don't know until you give them the opportunity.
Yeah. John McDaid is our guest, the coordinator of football officials for the Southeastern Conference. Every year, part of your duty here is to talk about relevant rule changes that are coming into college football. What are the most notable things that a fan will recognize? Like the new kickoff rules was a giant thing when that happened. Like, is there anything notable that a fan will recognize this year?
The big thing that they're definitely going to recognize is the fact, not the definition or the requirements for targeting, but the penalty for targeting. If you're a first-time offender, you no longer are going to have the possibility for a first-half carryover disqualification for your next game. So no matter when you create targeting, if it's your first offense that season, you just disqualify the remainder of the game, you're eligible for the next game. If you're a second-time offender, no matter when the foul has, you are going to sit out the first half of that next game. And then if you're a third or more time offender, you're going to sit out an entire game for the next one. So how much should you expect people hitting penalty number 2 and penalty number 3? Over the last 5 years, we've averaged just under 6 players that got 2 targeting fouls across the entire season, across all of FBS.
Okay, so not just SEC.
Not just
FBS,
SEC,
okay.
all of FBS.
So 6 players have had 2 targetings.
Across all of FBS.
Got it.
No player for 5 straight seasons has had 3 or more.
Got it.
So another way to look at this is all the targetings you've seen, any game in FBS over the last 5 years, 95+% of them have been first-time offenders and would not be subjected to that first-half carryover disqualification should the foul have happened in the second half. Fans are definitely going to recognize that.
Yeah. My contention has been I believe the spirit of the targeting rule is good. We want to eliminate dangerous plays, not physicality. We want to eliminate dangerous plays. I think it is I think it's far too punitive to remove someone from a game when it's unintentional. Or I think this change at least opens the door toward the conversation to where we could get to a point where we see like a targeting 1 and targeting 2 where there is some subjectivity. Like a flagrant 1, flagrant 2 in basketball?
I'm not going to give you an opinion on that. I'm going to give you a non-answer to that. But I'll say this. It is an experimental change to the penalty, right? At the end of 26, caretakers of the game will look at statistics such as targetings per game in 26, how to compare to the last 5 to 10 years. The statistics of how many second and third and more time offenders, did that increase or decrease or whatnot? And they may elect to extend it as an experimental rule for 27. They may elect to make it a full-time rule or
Sure.
officially adopt it for the rule book. Once we get there and see that by reducing the penalty like we're doing this year doesn't decrease the deterrence, then we may get more comfortable talking about what you just asked me, right? But this is the necessary first step, because if any of the data points to it doesn't deter, the penalty doesn't deter much as it did in 25, we're going to go back to right where we were in 25.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I'm just going to ask it a different way, a different question. Do you feel, if you go back to, you were talking about the mechanics of officiating, do you feel like if you're officiating a football game, that you could determine real time what is dangerous and intentional and what is unintentional but reaches the level of targeting?
This is why it's a reviewable aspect of the game,
Yeah.
right? Let's face it, targeting is something that is a replay aspect of our game. Even if we do call it on the field, it's the only reviewable aspect of the game where the replay officials are not asked to assume the ruling on the field is correct until there's clear and obvious video evidence that it's not. We ask them, disregard. The flag is basically created a stop in the game to allow you to, on your own, determine whether there's a target or not. I was the official on the field that threw the roughing the passer with targeting against Devin White in 2018, right? That play, there was a couple more that year. That play was what led to removing that assumption that the ruling on the field is correct and asking the replay official to evaluate all aspects of targeting to confirm it, right? So it's no longer do we have the ability in real time just looking at it once, because we're reviewing all aspects of it in the replay booth. I'm very comfortable with the way we've defined targeting. I'm very comfortable with the work that we do in the replay booth. I know we don't always agree we don't always agree and have to agree to disagree with the schools when we're reviewing something. I get it, right? I also believe fully that the rule has changed the behavior for the better for the players, and it's working. The question now is by reducing for first-time offenders this carryover disqualification, does the deterrence go down?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, that's a really good thing, and we can possibly move forward to make this an official part of the rule book, and then maybe talk about you asked about a flagrant one approach. Only by taking this incremental step and seeing what effect it has at the game, good, bad, or indifferent, could we get to that next step.
Went to Mass the day after the LSU Mississippi State, the targeting on Devin White, and the priest, after the sign of the cross and opening Mass, had said, "Tigers made us wait too long last night to put that one away, and I wasn't targeting."
That's what makes this game so. The passion, the passion and the emotion.
Father Phil, shout out! It was so good.
I was probably bleary-eyed on a flight from New Orleans back to Washington when the priest was saying that.
John McDaid, the coordinator of football officials. This is fun. We appreciate the time as always. Is there anything else that the SEC football fan that they love that they need to know about rule changes for this year?
There's some other rule changes. I try to focus on when you have these kind of discussions. What will the fans actually notice? The targeting one's the big one.
Yeah, for sure.
The coaches are talking a lot about the change in numbering exceptions for punts, and I think the fans are taking note of it because the coaches are talking so much about it. But if the coaches weren't talking about it, I don't know if the fans would even pick up.
Sure.
That the fact that we're asking for more stringency when they're using numbering exceptions. But no, the game's in a pretty good place. The evolution on the coaching side, how they're asking the players to play the game, the techniques, it's fast. The velocity is as much as I've ever seen it, right? And it's a challenge for us as officials to understand it. I sent my officials. So we had our clinic last week, our preseason clinic last week with our officials, 2.5 days in Birmingham, Alabama. And one of the last things I asked them to do is look, we just discussed for 2.5 days how I'm interpreting the rules, how I want you to interpret the rules, what our approved rulings are, what our judgments should be, so on and so forth. Now the important thing is go visit our schools and August, work their scrimmages, and find out how our coaches are interpreting the rules, right? Because that's the intersection between what we are train and develop and then what we're going to do on the field. Go ask the coaches how they're interpreting this new rule for numbering exceptions, and you'll be in a better position to anticipate what's going to happen come Labor Day weekend.
John, it's a pleasure. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for the time.
Thank you. Best of luck and enjoy your 26th season.
I think we're going to do that. It will not be boring, and Baton Rouge seldom is. He's John McDaid, the coordinator of officials for the Southeastern Conference. We appreciate a couple of minutes with him. Our coverage all week here from Radio Row at SEC Football Media Days is brought to you by Relief Windows and ReliefWindows.com. FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake Championship Health Partner of LSU Athletics. Rev Fiber and Parish Construction and Roofing. Let me knock out a quick break. We'll come back and wrap up hour number 1 on AFR.
After further review.
GLO. GlowResources.com, GlowResources.com. Complete employer solutions. It's Glow Resources. That's where you can find them. Remember, if you're hiring, Glow Resources, what they do is they work for you, the employer. They're not a temp staffing agency. They work for you, the employer, to help you find the right employee. You put the right people, the right seats on the bus. That's how you maximize efficiency and productivity within your business. It doesn't matter what business you're in, and Glow Resources can help. If you're looking for skilled blue-collar labor, Glow Resources. Remember their professional placement division. Any type of white-collar office job, from an office assistant all the way up to the C-suite, Glow Resources can help. And yes, home base is in Baton Rouge, but they have offices all over the Southeast. Recently named one of the top 100 private companies in Baton Rouge in the Baton Rouge Business Report. It's Glow Resources. So check them out online at glowresources.com. GLO, glowresources.com. Glowresources.com, complete employer solutions.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa. Presented by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Relief Windows, Rev Fiber, and Parish Construction and Roofing.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here from Digital Drive, what they formerly called Radio Row at SEC Football Media Days. Thanks to John McDaid for joining us. And if you missed the conversation, I would highly recommend you go back and check that out. The convo about targeting is interesting because my contention with the targeting rule is, forever there was never a willingness to bend because the issue was player safety. And if ever they altered the rule, the perception, even if not reality, the perception would be that they are not considering player safety. Again, I disagree with that. And I've always appreciated the spirit of the targeting rule, what we are trying to do. We're trying to eliminate dangerous plays from the game. And I think everybody can be okay with that, can understand and appreciate that. The challenge has been what John brought up is a perfect example and an illustration. The Devin White play. He said he was the white hat who threw the official on the Devin White play against Mississippi State in 2018. No sane person can look at that play and say that was a dangerous, violent, malicious act that warrants an ejection and sitting out the first half of the next game. There is no reality where that is a logical thought. However, by the letter of the law, right? Forcible contact, head or neck area, and so Devin went, to the face mask of the quarterback and then pulled off. But by the letter of the law, that was targeting. But that's the absurdity of the rule. But they were never going to change it because of the layered-in perception. Because the fear has always been litigation. Think of the NFL with the concussion lawsuits, right? The concussion lawsuit settlement in the NFL. That's what's always no one will ever acknowledge that, right? But that is always the motivation, along with trying to make the game safer. But whenever they're willing to make the change that John alluded to the targeting rule this year, it is an open door into saying, okay, well, if you're willing to take this step and it goes well, then you take another half step, and then maybe another. No different than my thought as it pertains to the college football playoff. Going to the 4-team playoff meant the door was always open to go to 12. And going to 12 means the door's open to go into 16 or 24 or whatever that number may be. So the fact that they are changing the targeting rule this year, even experimentally, says the door is open ultimately getting to what is the right way to do it, which would be like a flagrant 1, flagrant 2, a targeting 1, targeting 2, where you can determine malice or intent. All right, it's After Further Review. We're brought to you by Parish Restoration, parishrestoration.com. Kill mold, remove odor, have mold or think you might, water intrusion. Look, South Louisiana, the mold capital of the world. It's wet, it's humid. Breeding ground for mold. If you have mold or think you might, let our friends at Parish Restoration help you out. Go to parishrestoration.com, parishrestoration.com. Jim Woodworth and his gang, his team, they'll do an awesome job for you. They'll give you a free estimate. They'll spray their patented non-toxic dry fog. It's easy. They do your home in half a day. But it's not just homes. Business, office, church, school, doctor's office, workout facility, whatever. They'll come and spray, get it clean, sanitized, mold-free, smelling great. Parish Restoration, parishrestoration.com, parishrestoration.com. Okay, it is After Further Review. Thanks for hanging out with us here, y'all, on this Tuesday edition of AFR, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Brooks Austin joins us next from Radio Row.
After Further Review.
I want to take 60 seconds and remind you about our friends at South Point Volkswagen Airline, just north of Highland, southpointvw.com, southpointvw.com. New and certified pre-owned in Baton Rouge and online at southpointvw.com. We drove to the beach a couple weeks ago and loaded up Erica's Atlas. Tell you, tons of room, fit all of my stuff, her stuff, Drew's stuff, and trust me, she brings a lot of stuff for Drew and for herself as well. I had one little suitcase, but tons of space. And then, of course, all the safety features gives me great peace of mind when I have my family in the vehicle. Knowing you're driving one of the safest vehicles on the road when you buckle into a Volkswagen. 9 different IIHS top safety picks. That's the highest safety designation. You get the great gas mileage, all the great style, feel, performance of luxury without the cost. And got great deals as the 4th of July savings continue all month. So check them out at southpointvw.com. Southpointvw.com. South Point Volkswagen, what's your direction?